Atlas of Holocaust Literature is one of scholarly digital collections on new Panorama of Polish Literature platform, created and developed in the Institute of Literary Research of Polish Academy of Sciences. Digital collections published on our platform are created by combining scholarly knowledge, digital narrative structures, and carefully chosen visual material, created by graphic designer or obtained from the cultural heritage institutions such as museums or libraries. Atlas of Holocaust Literature is an example of fruitful cooperation between researchers from different domains: digital humanities, Holocaust studies, and cartography. Secondly, it shows how the tangible cultural heritage, like photographs or handwritten testimonies, can be contextualized and situated in time and place by researchers. The result could be treated as a cultural heritage collection on one hand and a research tool for Holocaust scholars on the other. As you can see, our collection has 3 modules devoted to places, people, and time. The first module is gathering all the places and areas mentioned in 17 selected memoirs or testimonies of the Holocaust from the Warsaw Ghetto. Even in such limited selection, our team found almost 1,000 spatial units, addresses, roads, areas mentioned in those testimonies. Each unit has its own separate entry, grouping all the fragments concerning this unit and linking each fragment with its author and the historical period. Each of them is also accompanied by a map with a precisely marked address or road. Second module shows biographical information about authors of memoirs, interactive maps of each person's places in different periods, and links to all the places mentioned by this author. Third module shows information about each period of time during Holocaust, with links to places and people connected with this period.
The convention we chose allowed us to combine the aesthetic form of presentation while maintaining the usability of maps and the seriousness of their interdisciplinary project theme. Maps are both a tool and an effect of research, but also a visual representation of historical processes. They combine many stages of the information flow cycle, from gathering information to its use. In cartography, aesthetic is a kind of tool. The key to a good map is a harmonious combination of form and content. But the map itself can be seen as a work of art, as a product of a designer or artist, using a line, point, plane, and typography. Maps as visual information carriers have an almost infinite number of possibilities and applications. At first, we had to prepare a graphical background for a map based on existing documents, a grid of streets and outlines of buildings made by a cartographer who has been dealing with the Warsaw Ghetto for years. We adapted it to the specificity of the digital project while giving it a symbolic character. The ghetto map and the map of Warsaw have different scale, accuracy, and different cartographic mode. The ghetto map is more detailed with outlines of the properties. These maps are the background for marking on both static and dynamic maps. Each entry devoted to a single spatial unit, address, place, street, area, and road, includes a static map with its visual representation. Apart from typical point and line markings, there are also hypothetical route markings. When we don't know the course of the entire road, uncertain fragments are represented by semi-transparent lines. In the map of Warsaw, we also point out with arrows the entries concerning the towns near Warsaw. Apart from static maps, the collection also includes interactive dynamic maps where we mark activities related to a specific person over time. The map of each person is divided into periods that can be switched on and off. Selected periods are divided into sub-periods. They are varied by texture. All this can be seen in the map legend. Places are marked with lines, points, and graphical signatures when the description concerns an unidentified place. The markings show the boundaries of the area and the scale of spatial activity. They present the topographic experience in time. The division into periods shows the dynamics of changes in the ghetto. The main events have a specific representation in the descriptions of places, and thus on maps. As a team, we have created a series of analog concept sketches on the structure of the collection. Then, while working on specific maps, we also made sketches of individual markings on maps or various types of notes from map production and verification of descriptions and topographical doubts. Apart from the analog notes, we have prepared electronic graphic notes on a cartographic basis. This was the first phase of drawing personal maps. Here, one color is assigned to one person, and the textures are differentiated by periods and sub-periods. You can see the density of markings and the scale of the process.
We are standing in front of the Berson and Baumann Children's Hospital. The building was erected in 1876-78 with the funds of two Jewish families, Berson and Baumann. The hospital was dedicated to the children, both Jewish and Polish. Of course, it was a Jewish property, a Jewish hospital, but also open for the Polish children. The first director of this hospital was Ludwik Chwat, but the most famous, legendary director of the hospital, the last director of the hospital, was Dr. Alina Braude-Hellerowa, who perished during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Before the war, the building was subsequently extended. During the war, the building of the hospital found himself within the ghetto walls. That's why it could stay at the former place. There was no necessity to move. There were several wards, infections ward, surgery ward, internal ward, and the circumstances of the ghetto was horrible. That's why a lot of children were admitted to the hospital, and that the whole hospital was overcrowded, and the conditions were very, very bad. And it was necessity to find another place, to find a new building with a new branch of the hospital. And the building was found in Żelazna Street, but the main hospital stayed here on Śliska Street. During the Great Deportation Action, in August the 10th, the whole patients and physicians were deported to the Umschlagplatz. What is very important, the building survived, and just few years after the war, it was a site of a central Jewish community in Warsaw, and in that building was transferred the Ringenbrunn archive documentation, which was excavated in September 46, and inside on the third floor in a big hall, the whole documentation, which were wet, destroyed in an awful condition, were recovered and underwent reconstruction. Within the period of 1905-1912, Janusz Korczak, famous educator, writer and personality, used to work here. It was his first job after graduating medical faculty in Warsaw University. We are standing in the front of the tenement house Chłodna the 20th. This building was erected in 1913. Very luxury building, early modernistic facade. Before the war, it was well known as a tenement house under the clock. The clock is situated in the line of a second balcony. During the war, this building was inside the ghetto walls, next to Chłodna Street, which was excluded from the ghetto. And in that ghetto time, the building was known as a White House, the White House. Why? Because in this building used to live the most prestigious and most important clerks from Judenrat. Among them, the chairman of Warsaw Ghetto, Adam Czerniaków. Adam Czerniaków used to live just in the second floor, just below this clock. After the war, the building was destroyed, but the whole structure survived, and it is a very important factor because it is a very rare situation that in after ghetto time we can find a building intact and preserved in the whole structure with two backyards inside. So this is a unique situation to observe how the typical tenement house before the war, from before the war, was look like. I'm standing in Chłodna Street on the real cobblestones from the period, from the ghetto time. And behind me is an intersection of Chłodna and Żelazna Street, one of the most busiest and the most important and the most horrible place in the ghetto. Chłodna Street pierced the ghetto into two parts. The south part called small ghetto and the north part called large ghetto. And this point, this side, was the only possible passage from the north to the south and from the south to the north. That's why in this intersection, this intersection was always overcrowded. A lot of Jews were waiting for the possibility to pass on the other side. And during this time, during this waiting time, they were harassment, they were beaten, they were mocking by the German. So this place was horrible, really horrible, and a lot of Jews just were afraid to come there. This communication situation was so complicated that one has to improve it. That's why it was a decision to erect the wooden bridge over Chłodna Street, and this construction has started in January 1941, and on the 26th of January 42 the bridge was open to the public. The wooden bridge over the Chłodna Street is one of the most famous icons of the ghetto ever. We have a lot of photographs from the period with the bridge, with the pedestrian over the bridge. So we are standing now in one of the most spectacular place in the ghetto.
Now we move from the heart of the ghetto to its northwestern border. We are in so-called Parysów. Before the war, it was one of the more peripheral enclaves of Warsaw. The character of Parysów was influenced by proximity of Powązki, the cemetery district. Neighborhood of the city of dead couldn't be attractive for the living. Therefore, as early as in the 19th century, small factories from Powiśle, especially tanneries, were moving here. So you can imagine yourself that smell, a smell of fresh leather, which effectively prevented anyone who had any money from settling here. Parysów was district of tanneries and district of the poor, both Catholic and Jewish. From here we can see the tannery of Temmler and Schwede company. Before the war it was one of the largest, if not the largest, one of the largest tanneries in Europe. It was the heart of Parysów and it worked also during the ghetto period. The materials contained in Atlas of Holocaust Literature show Parysów mainly in two ways. As a border of ghetto and as an area which is almost deserted and extremely poor even for the ghetto. Probably both of the ways are connected with most important card written by Parysów during the ghetto period. Neighborhood of the factory was a place of the smuggle, both people and weapons, extremely important during the ghetto uprising. Now we are in the heart of Powązki, beyond the ghetto walls. In Atlas, this way out has two meanings. For the people who had right to go out beyond the ghetto walls, it could be the space of freedom. It could be, for example, a place to take a rest on the fields and meadows behind the cemeteries. We got beautiful description of such a trip written by Ludwig Hirschfeld. For most of the people, however, living the ghetto more or less in this place meant a nightmare of mass bathing organized by Germans in a bathhouse at Spokojna Street 15, right in front of us. Nowadays it's a building of sculpture and new media faculty of Warsaw Academy of Fine Arts. Actually, all the testimonies about bathhouse at Spokojna Street are the evidence of trauma. Trauma of chasing away by Germans, mass bathing, sense of dehumanization. When we are here, we can imagine why this trauma was so strong. Proximity of the cemeteries. The surrounding is desolated even now, and no one could know where this bathing can find its ending, because Umschlagplatz is less than 1 kilometer from here. And the place we can see now is some kind of symbol. We are on the border of the world. is the border between cemeteries, Catholic Powązki Cemetery and Jewish cemetery.